Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Really excited for today's show with Ilya. Although, if you got here a little early, I think we're going to turn this into a game. You can watch the chat, and he's not here yet. So we'll hang out, and I'm sure he'll be here very soon because he and I have been chatting in WhatsApp. So I'm going to fudge a little bit here till Ilya shows up. If you're new to the show, this is Ponomarev versus Putin. Ilya Ponomarev, former member of the Russian parliament, was the only member of the Russian parliament to vote against the annexation of Crimea. He predicted at that time that the annexation would lead to a full invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which we've now seen. And he vowed then publicly, very publicly, that if Russia invaded, he would support the Ukrainians. And that's exactly what he's doing. So we've talked about here on the show a lot. Ilya has launched an online YouTube channel in Russian for Russians called February Morning. February Morning, of course, named after February 24th, the morning that the Russians invaded. And where are you, Ilya? Come on. Anyway, so they have a 24/7 channel. Tab 6513, hit your refresh. Jasper says, why do I have 2 Stop Putin Now times for tomorrow? I don't know, Jasper. There seems to be some kind of problem with the system creating duplicates. It doesn't matter which one you choose. That was the same for today as well. Either one you choose will get you in the show tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Anyway, back to Ilya, and we're trying to fix that, Jasper. I apologize for that, and I'm sorry to anyone else it's confusing. And tab 6513, try to hit refresh on your browser. That might fix the problem. We're watching for Ilya now. It's kind of a Where Waldo thing here. Where's Ilya? Anyway, he vowed very publicly that he would support Ukraine if there was an invasion by Russia. And that is what he's doing with his February Morning channel. It's for Russians, to give Russians accurate, up-to-date information about what's happening, because it's very hard for them. I just got a message from Ilya. Hold on a sec, guys. I'm going to respond. I don't know if I can read this to you or not. He's in a meeting somewhere. You understand the security concerns. He says, in a very high-level meeting. It is dragging way longer than I expected. I cannot step out. I've told him not to worry about it. He'll join us when he can. I think we have to accept that this is part of, given the high-level stuff that he's doing. For instance, I was going to ask him this week. I still will when we see him. Last week, he was a little late joining the show. He was on a plane. It was delayed. We've all experienced that. And he ended up talking to us, which I think he was going to do anyway, from the terminal of the airport. He was on his way to D.C., and he told us he was going to Washington, D.C. For meetings about sanctions. So obviously he's doing things that we need him to do, and he'll get here when he can. In the meantime, you get me, which is, I hope you don't think is such a bad thing. Anyway, he launched his channel, 24/7 channel. I'm going to say, I think it's accurate to say, in coordination with the Ukrainian military, because he did enlist in the military, the Ukrainian military. By the way, a lot of people are joining now, so I'm going to kind of recap where we're at now, and I'll do that a couple of times over the next few minutes as people join. This is Ponomarev versus Putin. Ilya Ponomarev is my co-host of the show. As you probably know, he's a former member of the Russian parliament. He was the only member of the Russian parliament in 2014 to vote against the annexation of Crimea. And he said at the time, he predicted it would lead to a full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which we now know has happened. And he vowed at the time that if Russia invaded Ukraine, he would support Ukraine in that war. And that's exactly what he's doing. So I just got a message from him. That I'm not going to say where he is, but he's in a very high-level meeting. It's dragging way longer, and let's hope that means it's a good meeting with a good outcome. Jasper, I'll get to that in a minute. And he'll join us as soon as he can. And I think we just have to accept this can happen. I think it's just the nature of what he's doing, and we have to, frankly, be glad that he's in these kind of meetings. And sometimes it means you'll be talking to me. I hope you see that as not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, he's really who you came to see, but I'm going to do my best to deliver you value today, and he'll join as soon as he can. Jasper asks, is this series going to continue with you and Ilya? Well, thank you for the hearts, by the way. Yes, Jasper, we have no intention of ending this. If you were on my show yesterday, you heard that there's some changes being made in my schedule. I was doing shows every day. I'm scaling that back to 2 shows a week. This one every Thursday at 11 a.m. And please, please, please invite your friends and family. The URL for the show is very simple. And Lucas, maybe you'll put this in the chat box. It's beams.live/stop-Putin. beams.live/Putin. We're going to continue doing this show. And to be honest, we have some other, it would be premature for me to announce it this week. I hope we can announce it next week. Ilya and I have some really exciting news to share with you about the show. And we tried to wrap things up today so that we could do it today. Violetta or Violetta, I'm guessing it's Violetta. I'll answer that in a minute. Jasper, you should have gotten an email from me last night, but we'll make sure you get all the information. Anyway, the other piece of information is that I'll be doing a new show also at 11 a.m. starting next week, every Wednesday, with our very good friend Thomas Nadrowski. The name of that show is Tyranny Today. And the scope of it, frankly, is beyond what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. I'm scrolling down here. I want to tell you the subtitle of the show, but I don't want to say it wrong. Let's see if I can find it here in my notes. I probably cannot. So hold on here. Yes, the name of that show is Tyranny Today, Ukraine, Russia, China, Taiwan, and beyond. So Thomas and I are really going to look beyond what's happening in Ukraine, in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, to the rest of the world. And what does that mean in the world to tyranny, tyrants, and dictatorship? And I hope you'll join us every Wednesday at 11 a.m. And that show page just went live. If you go to BeamZ, Lucas, I don't know if you have that. There. Lucas just put it in the chat box, and along with a link to the Stop Putin show. So that's my schedule going forward. There may be some changes. I really want to encourage everybody to join us again tomorrow at 2:00. Anna G., who's been a regular member of the audience here, is going to join us. I think it's really exciting to have the audience members joining us. She really wants to help people understand how they can use social media more effectively to build support for what's happening in Ukraine and the work, and including the work we're doing here at BeamZ. And she has some really, frankly, some simple, easy things you can do to take what you're already doing in social media and make it even more effective. And frankly, I have a lot to learn. I'm not a social media pro either. So please join us. That's tomorrow at 2. That will be my final show at 2:00 in the afternoon. Yesterday was my final show. I think yesterday. Well, 2. Anyway, my schedule is now Wednesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Wednesday with Thomas Nadrowski, who you have all seen, who's fantastic. And if you're new to the show, you definitely want to be here at 11 a.m. next week, 11 a.m. Eastern. And then next Thursday, again, at the same time we're talking now with Ilya. So I want to get back to his channel that he's doing with the Ukrainian military. And actually, let me back up again because there's still some people joining. My co-host on the show, Ilya Ponomarev. Thank you for the hearts. Or maybe they're for Lucas. I'm not sure. Lucas just put a link to the Stop Putin show with Gregg Stebben. That's for tomorrow at 2:00 with Anna G. So my co-host, Ilya Ponomarev, former member of the Russian parliament. He was the only member of the Russian parliament in 2014 to oppose the annexation of Crimea. He predicted at the time that the annexation would lead to a full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which obviously is happening now, right? And he said at the time that if Russia invaded Ukraine, he would support Ukraine, and that's exactly what he did. He told us in the first show that when the war broke out, He went to, I'm sure he knows everybody in the Ukrainian government, including the president. He went to whoever the appropriate person was and said, "Okay, I'm here. I want to, what can I do?" And instead of handing him a machine gun, I think the consensus was he would be more effective, given his background, his understanding of global politics and such. He would be more effective making a channel on YouTube, a 24/7 channel, which is now called February Morning, named after February 24th, that is in Russian for Russians in Russia, so that Russians have 24/7 access to information and news about what's happening, because it's hard for them to get that in Russia. And so one of the things that came out of that channel that he's doing, this is one of the points I was getting to here, is Ilya and a team of others have created a foundation called the Bravery Foundation. And as he's explained to us, what the Bravery Foundation is doing is identifying this. Listen to this, because this is very interesting. It's very subtle and it's very smart. They're identifying Russians in Russia who are essentially trapped in positions where they're at risk of, their lives are at risk, or they're at risk of imprisonment because they oppose the war, but their jobs require them to continue supporting the war. So they might be in the military, they might be in the government, they might be in the media, they might be part of the vast Russian propaganda machine, but they're people who oppose the war, but have jobs where they're trapped continuing to do the job, and the job is a significant one in supporting the war, and they need help either getting out of the country. So part of what Ilya's foundation is doing, Debbie, please put your email address in the chat and we will make sure you're on the mailing list. So they're extracting people from the country, or some of these people have already been imprisoned and they're helping pay their legal fees. And in some cases, I believe they're actually helping support the families if the person has been extracted or it has been imprisoned. So there's a lot of really subtle and important work being done here. But one of the things you have to stop and think about is, if Ilya and his team can identify these people that are playing significant roles supporting the war and remove them, then they're pulling important pieces of machinery out of the war effort. And that has a huge impact on what the Russians are able to do. Anybody who's ever worked for a company knows when somebody leaves, especially if they leave quickly, because for some reason they're here today and gone tomorrow, the machine starts to break down, right? And it's hard to replace that person. And that person disappears with a lot of institutional knowledge that leaves your organization at a loss, but also, frankly, is a benefit to where they go. And in this case, where they're going is to help Ilya and his team and others support the Ukrainians. So what the Bravery Foundation is incredibly significant. And I'm bringing it up for a couple of reasons. One is, if you look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there's a button with a $ where it says pay host. I'm the host, Ilya's the host. We're not being paid, we're volunteers. If you hit that button and it looks like this, and you make a contribution of $2 or $5 or $7 or $1,000, every dollar we collect goes toward the Bravery Foundation and supporting Ilya's work there. There's another way you can support the Bravery Foundation, and that is, since last week, we've made a website, tcarol10 or tcarol0. Thank you so much for supporting the Bravery Foundation. I really appreciate that. And anyone else, even if all you can do is give $2, I've said this many times, $2 in Ukraine goes a long way. It buys a lot more than a cup of coffee at Well, I don't think $2 buys a cup of coffee at Starbucks in the US, but it'll be a lot more. I think somebody told us it's worth 5 or 10 times more money. So if you can hit that button and make even a $2 donation, it will be well used and make a huge difference. So thank you for doing that. The other point I want to make is we created a landing page. Lucas, add this if you have it, and if you don't, I will type it in. But we created a landing page. It's very easy to remember. It's beams.live/bravery. beams.live/bravery. When you go there, there's a landing page for the Bravery Foundation. And the reason we did this is you can contribute there. You can share it with your friends and family. Look, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, Gregg, you went to Poland. And by the way, Violetta asked, am I still in Poland? No, I've been back about a week and a half. And don't tell Jody, oh, Jody, you're here. Hi. But I would love to go back. I'm looking for reasons to go back. I'd like to take Jody back with me as well. If we find a reason why it makes sense for me or Jody and I to go back to continue to do more work to support the Ukrainians, that's what we're going to do. But right now I'm at home, and frankly, it's pretty nice to be at home. Where was I? We made this landing page, beams.live/bravery, so that you can share it with your friends and family, because so many people have said to me, I want to help in Ukraine and I don't know what to do. And when people say that to you, give them this URL. I'm going to type it right now. BeamZ.live. I'm saying it out loud so I don't mistype it. Bravery. There it is. If you go to that website, there's a landing page. You can make a donation there. And again, every dollar we collect will go to the Bravery Foundation. It's really important what they're doing. And and I think if you've been here and seen Ilya, he is the most credible guy. We want to support him in every way we can. So thank you for helping if you can. The other thing I want to say, and you've been asking for this a long time, we've now built into BeamZ the ability to archive shows. Where is he? Good question, Tab. I got a message from him just as the show was starting. I'm not going to tell you where he is for security reasons, but he sent me a meeting and he said, I have a problem sitting in blank place in a very high level meeting. It's dragging way longer than I have expected and I cannot step out. So I know he will join us when he's free. And he may not get free, but we'll grill him about that meeting next week when we see him. I think, as I've said, I think we just have to accept that given the high level that he is supporting the Ukrainian government and military and people, we have to accept that sometimes he's going to have conflicts like this. In fact, last week he was a little late. He was on a flight that was delayed. He was on his way to DC for meetings about sanctions, and he ran off the plane and did the show standing in the terminal of the airport. Anyway, excuse me. I was talking about archiving the shows. We now have the ability to offer you all the past shows. Lucas, thank you for adding the Bravery Foundation URL there. We now have the ability to add all the past shows to the website. So when you go to the show page, it's beams.live/stopputin. All 3 of the previous shows are there. This show will be added an hour or 2 after we finish it. And we'll continue to add the shows there every week, which is great. If you miss one, you can go see it. If you want to share the show, you can go and share it that way and people can see it. And I think you'll also begin to see that other shows begin to archive their past shows as well. So, but obviously this show is of incredible significance for our efforts to support the Ukrainians. And that's why it's one of the first to have the previous shows archived. So it's beams.live/stopputin. So a couple of things I want to talk about here today. And these were things I had hoped we could ask Ilya about, and we'll get to many of them next week. One is obviously everybody has their eyes on what's happening in Mariupol and the Azovstal steel plant. It's hard to watch what's happening there. We know that about 1,000 soldiers have now left the plant, have been driven away in Russian vehicles. They're now essentially prisoners of war. There's some question about what will happen to them. We actually talked with Thomas Nadrowski about this yesterday. One of the things he said that's reassuring, and I don't want you to misinterpret this, but one of these things he said that's reassuring is in the overall war effort, this is not a meaningful event. That doesn't mean that Putin's not going to paint it as a meaningful event to Russians, because that's what he does. He controls the media, he controls the information, and then he uses it to his advantage, whether he's being honest or not. So be careful of whatever you hear coming out of Russia. It's not a meaningful event overall to Ukraine's strength. And frankly, Russia's failures and struggles with willpower and manpower and all kinds of things. So I found that very reassuring from Thomas. But I added a disclaimer to this right now when I started to talk about this, because I don't want anyone to interpret that as meaning the soldiers themselves are not important. Of course they're important. And you heard President Zelensky call them heroes. They are heroes. And it's unfortunate that this set of circumstances had to transpire. And I want to encourage you to stay calm in your perception and thinking about this. It's easy to assume that the worst is, you can see even in my face, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, it's hard for me to say this. It's easy to assume that the worst is or will happen to those soldiers. And we cannot rule that out. But we also have to assume, for instance, I saw a headline just before I started the show about the Red Cross being involved with the prisoners. We have to accept that the worst could happen, but we also have to accept that the best could happen, or something in between will happen. And if the Red Cross is involved and other humanitarian organizations, that should give us cause to believe that in the end, the soldiers will be treated appropriately. And we're reading a lot of headlines that suggest otherwise, but we have to remember that Russia's a misinformation machine. So are those headlines designed to manipulate us and manipulate the Ukrainians, or do they really indicate a truth and we don't know? So don't panic, okay? Jasper says the CBC, the Canadian Moscow Bureau, has been banned from Russia yesterday. Okay, great. But we don't know what that means. Assume everything that is happening in Russia and assume everything that you hear is happening in Russia may or may not be true and may or may not be explicitly and specifically designed to manipulate you. Don't allow yourself to be manipulated. The other part of this that I asked Thomas about, and I wanted to ask Ilya about this, and I hope we can talk about it with him next week if he doesn't make it this week, and it's looking pretty unlikely that he will. And I want to apologize to everybody for that, but I hope you understand, just given the nature of what he's doing, this sort of thing will happen. I asked Thomas yesterday, is there a strategic reason? Listen carefully. Is there a strategic reason Ukraine might have essentially created the circumstances it did for those soldiers to leave Azovstal? Was there a strategic reason in terms of timing and other things? I mean, first of all, we have to accept that they were in there for 82 days. The state of many of those soldiers was dire. But you might ask, okay, Jasper makes the point, it means we do not have reporters in Russia now. I mean, that's true. But there are still some reporters. And again, we just can't panic. What it really should say to us, Jasper and everyone else, is, this is exactly why Ukraine must win. This is exactly why we must continue to support Ukraine, because Russia is a country under dictatorship. There's no control of free information. And this just indicates it. This is just yet another piece of evidence that tells us Ukraine must win and we must continue to support them. But going back to the soldiers from Azovstal, is there a strategic reason why Ukraine did what they did this week in terms of timing and overall strategy? And I'm not an expert at this. That's why I talk to people like Ilya and talk to people like Thomas. But here's the question I asked Thomas, and I wanted to ask Ilya today. And that is, could there be a strategy here? And could the strategy be something like Ukraine believing that given the amount of global attention and concern, given the amount of concern the world has shown for those soldiers, if the Russians were now to mistreat them in any way, and we find out about that, And even a lack of information is going to cause the world to assume they're being mistreated. If there's any sign of mistreatment or any lack of information that assures the world that they are being treated appropriately, does that excuse me, does that give Ukraine a strategic advantage? And I would like to suggest that perhaps it does, in that, look, the world has already turned against Russia. You probably saw the clip of the Russian general on Russian TV the other day, basically, saying all the things he shouldn't have been saying as a former Russian general. If you haven't seen the clip, we'll stick it in the email today, because it's unbelievable. He's just saying the world has turned against us and we're doing a bad thing and we shouldn't be there. The world has already turned against Russia. If they hurt those soldiers from Avastal, or there's a lack of information leading the world to believe that those soldiers are being hurt, is that just going to be yet another very significant reason for the world to ramp up their efforts even more against Russia? I assume, I'm not saying that's the strategy, but I'm assuming there's some strategy in what Ukraine has done and why they did it this week and why they did it at all, that they believe gives them some strategic position. And look, the reality is, and I think that this is the bottom line of what I'm saying, we just have to wait and see. We have to wait and see. But don't panic. Don't spread panic. Be patient and let the events unfold, because you and I cannot control them. We have no control here. We can continue to do what we're doing. We can talk to our friends and family. We can contribute money when we're able to. We can stay informed ourselves. Thanks to tomorrow, we'll talk with Anna G about how to use social media effectively, more effectively. We can continue to use social media to get messages out. We can do all of those things. But the worst thing we can do is to panic or be manipulated. And that's the thing I want to encourage you not to do. Watch the news. Think about what it says. Think about the implications. Even, CBC being thrown out of Russia. I mean, yes, it's meaningful, but what does it mean? Why is that being done? What did CBC do, if anything, to cause the Russians to do that? We just don't know. And the fact that we don't know and don't have access to free information, or as much free information, when I say free, I mean, available, accurate information, again, just reinforces the root, or one of the roots of the problem with Russia in general. It's a dictatorship. It's tyranny. It's run by a tyrant. It's why Thomas and I are launching this show called Tyranny Today. Tyranny Today, and what's the subtitle? Hold on, I'm going to see if I can find it. Tyranny Today, Ukraine, Russia, China, Taiwan, and beyond. Because this kind of tyranny is not just a factor in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's happening in more and more places around the world, and we're going to talk about it. It's impossible to look at the Russian invasion of Ukraine and not think of China and Taiwan. And then it's impossible not to start thinking about other places like North Korea and Hungary and Turkey and other places where there's either tyranny or the threat of tyranny. And we all have to stay informed about it. Christine says, now Russian soldiers are actually being prosecuted for war crimes, may make their soldiers think about the way they treat prisoners. So, Christine, are you saying Russian soldiers being prosecuted by Ukraine for war crimes? Actually, give us a little more about your thinking there, because I have ideas about what you're suggesting, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Jasper asks, are American main networks still in Moscow? I have to be honest, I don't know the answer to that, but I assume yes, because I think if they had been thrown out of Moscow, I think that would have been big news. And the fact that we haven't heard news about it makes me think they're still there. So I don't know the answer, but it's a great question. And maybe you guys will come to the show tomorrow with information about that, and we can talk about how to use social media to get the word out about why these are such important topics. We've now gone into overtime. I'm going to wrap up. I'm sorry that Ilya didn't join us today. I hope you understand why. I know he is very committed to being here, talking with us, answering your questions. So please do not take this as anything of a lack of commitment by him. He and I were chatting most of the day yesterday on WhatsApp, chatting, overnight and even this morning. So the fact, let's consider that the fact that he is in a high level meeting that kept going, let's assume that means the meeting is good news. Brawell just paid for the show. It's the $ in the upper right corner, or it says post. I'm sorry, pay host. Every dollar we will collect will go to the Bravery Foundation, Ilya's Bravery Foundation. You can also send your friends and family there by going to our landing page. It's beamz.live/bravery. And let's see, what else should I say? If you go to the page for this show, beamz.live/stop Putin, we should put a link to the Bravery Foundation there, and we'll do that. But you can also see the past shows, and this show will be posted in the next hour or two. Again, I'll see you tomorrow with Anna G at 2:00 Eastern. Please join us. I think it's going to, first of all, I'm very excited to have a member of the audience now joining us on the show, because I think that's a trend we would like to continue. Join us tomorrow at 2. We'll all meet. We know Anna through chat. We're actually going to get to see her tomorrow. I know she has some great information to share with us. I will be back after tomorrow on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern with Thomas Nadrowski. That's Tyranny Today. I will be back the following day, Thursday, with Ilya, Ponomarev versus Putin. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for the hearts. Thank you. I know I'm a poor substitute for Ilya, but again, I think the fact that he's in a meeting and it's going long, let's assume that it's really good news for Ukraine. And to the degree that he can tell us about it, he will tell us about it next week. And again, next week, Ilya and I will have some other news to share, I believe, that I think you'll find very exciting. And with that, I'm going to point to the button to pay again. $2 will go a long way. $1,000 will go a long way, too. If you can, please make a donation to the Bravery Foundation. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow at 2:00.